All right, welcome back to this week's edition of the Rock and Roll Ghost podcast. This week we have Manny, I just screwed that up, and Paul Rivera, members of Chicago hardcore rock band Armada. They're promoting their new album, Anti-Colonial Volume 2, which is out now. They're doing a show February 26th. Is it at the Empty Bottle?
No, it's at the Cobra Lounge.
The Cobra Lounge. Why did I have that? Cobra Lounge. Sorry about that. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Fabulous.
Good. Well, let's talk a little bit about how work came about on this new album. Obviously, you probably worked on it during these past 2 years during COVID. Did you find that to be more difficult to deal with as far as getting together, or was it pretty much the same as always for you guys?
It was more difficult. Yeah, it was more difficult in every sense of the word. From people getting stuck in different geographical locations and having to postpone actually recording, to lockdowns, forcing us to cancel studio dates or move them further along, to just internally everybody digesting a worldwide pandemic in their own way and kind of dealing with their situation individually in different ways. It was a pretty chaotic time. We were very fortunate that we always had work and shelter and food and all that. So we were good in that sense, but it was a lot to take in, and especially draining to try to push a creative project forward when the medium that we enjoyed the most, which is playing live, was pretty much non-existent.
Right. And Manny, what did the pandemic end up having any effect on what you guys wrote for the album? I mean, there is a song called Plagued on the album. I don't know if that's inspired by this or not.
Ironically, Plague was written right at the beginning of the pandemic. But I would say it had a big effect both in the music and the lyrics. Musically, we explore a little bit of the chaotic side of the band, the sense of isolation, the sense of alienation. In songs like Death on Replay, for example, we experiment a lot with odd time signatures and unusual chords, and I think everything that we were going through during the pandemic, it really translated into the music.
Okay. Paul, with regards to you have a new vocalist, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Casper. What for those that don't know, what transpired to require new vocalists to join the band?
Life. Life itself. We this has been a band for over 20 years.
Wow.
So it's very hard to maintain the same people, and that was the first time pretty much that we had a significant change. And yeah, life pulls you in different direction, and if you have the will and enough people have the desire to keep it going, you're either going to decide to figure it out and move on, or call it quits. And in our case, we still wanted to do it.
Yeah, we were very lucky to have Casper because he been on tour with us before as a roadie, so he kind of knew the songs before, and we were very fortunate to count on him, and it worked out at the end. So
yeah, what was the I guess anything new or different that he added to the core group, and what kind of, did the music change much at all, or did it just get just more in tune?
Absolutely, I think the music changed. I think everything changed. When you have a new band member, it's like a new girlfriend almost. Like everything is fresh. Everything feels new. Casper is very versatile with the way he writes and the way the phrasing of his songs. And we worked really close with him every time we were writing riffs, making sure that what we were writing kind of fit in with the subject he wanted to talk about on each song. Paul?
Yeah, and also it kind of gave the band the opportunity to kind of look within as well. Like there's like introspective songs probably for the first time in the history of the band. So it coincided with the pandemic when internally everybody's in a huge like what the hell is going on moment.
Right.
So yeah, the pieces just kind of fit, and the music and the lyrics just kind of reflected all of that. So that was definitely his doing.
Yeah. Now I haven't had much time with the album, and when you say introspective, I kind of had like a kind of almost an internal laugh, because there's nothing inherent in when you first listen to the album that sounds introspective. There's hardly any quiet moments. Actually, it's pretty in your face and full steam ahead. What would be an example that you could cite that
Sure.
people don't get on the first couple of listens?
Sure. Death on Replay, I feel like, is a very personal song to Casper. It pretty much speaks about just how he processes things and the world around him. So that song is purely about him, about just growing up and trying to get organized amongst a worldwide pandemic and amongst joining a new musical project and all that stuff. So that's a great example of it. And then also a song like Los Muertos, and All We Know are firsthand experiences of him going through Hurricane Maria and earthquakes in Puerto Rico and how it reached or affected him and his family. Gotcha. So yeah, there's quite a few examples of it that you're right, to a first time listener like might not get it, but if you sit down with the lyrics, you might catch on to it. Yeah,
the lyrics probably would reveal that more. I didn't have the lyrics to review beforehand, unfortunately, but you mentioned Los Muertos, and it's got this amazing, for me, there was something MC5 about it with that free jazz sax solo, which I thought was fascinating.
Give it to me.
No, I'm an older guy, so I'm imagining you know who the MC5 are, because you guys are hardcore and political, but there was just something about that just brought me back to that raging time, from that band that basically started, that kind of music, that political hardcore sound. Where did the idea to kind of have that jazz sax solo kind of come in? How did that come about?
When we were writing Los Muertos, we always had that one chaotic part where the sax is, and the drum and bass. We always wonder like, what should we do in this one part, And then Casper proposed like we should have some kind of wind instrument on here, doing like a chaotic off-key solo, something like Candiria, like MC5, something like that, like kind of dissonant, chaotic dissonant thing. And we were very lucky that Paul was in the Dominican Republic at one time during the recording process. And Paul, can you tell them about the process?
Yeah, so we ended up recording a few things down there that kind of makes the album pop, in our opinion, and one of those was the sax solo. And I went down there with the idea of what we wanted and how we wanted it to come across, and then I just found the right player, just talking to buddies of mine, find a guy whose style we liked and fit the idea, and just kind of let him rip. And he ripped.
Yeah, it's a
I told him
go ahead.
I told him MC5, and I told him David Bowie and Iggy Pop in Berlin on drugs, and he came up with that.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, that's one of the most interesting moments of the record for me, because it's like I was not expecting sax.
Good.
When the first few songs come on, it's like it's the last thing I figured a sax instrument would come into play. You guys are I don't know what generation you are, but you're all Dominican by nationality, correct?
Yeah, Casper's from Puerto Rico, and then the rest of
Okay.
us are Dominican.
Okay. How much does that influence? I mean, it has to influence your music greatly, but in what ways does it influence, how you play, what you play, and what you talk about? Because obviously, we had the last 4 years in particular were pretty hard for anybody that wasn't, a Trump fan, and, particularly anyone that wasn't, white on top of it. Where does the nationality, the family spirit all come into play, and how does it come into play?
Absolutely. Yeah, like you mentioned, both in musically and lyrically, it influenced a lot. I mean, we always talk about Latin music, and when you have an idea of Latin music, you think about happy music, a party, but there's also a very aggressive side of Latin music, especially a very percussive. Any percussion line of Latin music assembly is very aggressive, and it's got very aggressive moments. And we always try to capture that and build our own brand of hardcore with using those elements, And lyrically, yeah, I mean, we talk about colonialism, we talk about modern day colonialism, we talk about colonization of the mind too, and how corporations make you consume all this shit that you don't need and make you follow into these patterns to try to achieve success, a vision of success. But we also talk about, what Paul mentioned earlier, places like Puerto Rico, which is a United States colony since 1892. We have things like the hurricane, like the earthquakes, like people in need, and the United States government didn't care. They didn't do anything about it,
Right. Paul, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, much in line. Like it influences every aspect of what we do, from the way we play the punk beat. If you want to get specific, it's played with a little bit more of a lag than like your straight California tupa 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 tupa. We play it more where you can kind of dance to it. There's a bit of a lag in there. If you're not hearing it with distorted guitars, maybe you'd find yourself like wanting to dance to it. Lyrically, just like Manny said, because all our family is down there, so we're in the know. We go down there, so we're in the know of what's going on. So it's hard for that not to come into our lyrics. And then in other aspects of the musicality of the band, I think that there's always a yearning to pull from those influences and bring it into punk and hardcore. So personally, on the guitar, I'm always striving to learn what are the scales, what are the patterns, what are the things I can bring over. I know Manny as well. So it's like a whole treasure trove of things that we can pull into this genre that other bands in punk and hardcore don't necessarily utilize. So it makes our music stand out more, I guess, or, stand out, hopefully.
Yeah. Now, I mean, within the hardcore scene, are you, I don't know what the correct term would be. Are you a bit of a outlier in terms of, there's not many Latin based hardcore bands, or are there more than I can think of, that I know?
There's a lot, like in Chicago, there's definitely a lot. Like shouts out Si Dios Quiere, shouts out Esqueleto, Los Crudos. There's definitely a lot that have had a good trajectory. We've had the opportunity to tour bigger circuits in the US and Canada, and yeah, we're definitely an outlier. It's a blessing and a curse, because you stand out and it's like, wow, this is interesting. At the same time, like for promoters, for labels, for things like that could potentially help you along your path, it can get confusing because when they don't know how to label you.
Yeah. Manny, with regards to going out on tour, what have you found the reaction by fans, or if you're supporting someone, the reaction of, you know, people that you don't that might not necessarily know who you guys are?
Yeah, I mean, like Paul said, we done a lot of support tours with bigger acts, and it can go either way. You know, we had shows where a lot of people come up to us and they're like feel represented by us, feel like they can finally see somebody that looks like them, that sounds like them on a bigger stage, and it's inspiring for them. And we have people also say that they were with us until we say no to the border wall, you know?
Yeah.
So, it can, you know, it can be, but we're a band, we're a political band, and we, you know, every stage we climb, we deliver the same message, and we're open for confrontation too, you know, and we done it before, and we're willing to talk and discuss the topics we talk about in our songs. So it can go either way, you know. We're not scared.
Yeah. Well, to that point, as a political leaning band, how do you feel, you know, how difficult is it to get your message out in an age where, yes, people are probably more inclined to share their political beliefs more than ever because of social media and what have you, and because of the polarization of the country in particular. But when it comes to music, yeah, there's political music, but most of the stuff that gets, you know, is popular isn't politically. You haven't heard too many political statements come out in the last even 20 odd years, dating back to the Bush era. There was a few, but there wasn't much. I mean, how do you guys see about, you know, getting your message out and pushing through that barrier where maybe people don't want to necessarily hear anyone's political views?
Making the best music we can make.
Yeah.
Making it irresistible for you to listen to the music just because the music is so good, and it sounds so good, and the production is good, that you're eventually gonna have to pay attention to what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also a fun challenge. For example, getting on a tour or a festival stage where what we play and what we say is not the norm, or is not, you know, what's going to be discussed for the most part that day. That's also a challenge for us to be like Manny said, how can we make our show so good and make our message so in line with like just the humanity of everybody there, that no matter what, we're going to walk out of there with people giving us high fives.
Yeah.
And like we just did that, you know, last summer we got to play a Latino rock festival where it's like pop bands and ska bands and stuff like that here in Chicago. And, you know, that was a great challenge. It was like, we're going to kick so much ass, and we're going to connect with people on a human level. And you know, that was a great example of doing our job in that sense, and walking out of there with new friends, new fans, just connecting with people. So we don't look at it as
a high five or tell you to fuck off, but we will have a reaction. We will. Yeah. You will not ignore us. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I dig that. You know, and outside of music, I mean, what I don't know how politically activated or social, you know, social political more, you know, maybe than anything, because I mean, a lot of people don't have a lot of faith in modern day politics, even, you know, especially after the last 4 or so years. What kind of things are either of you involved in if anything?
Oh, absolutely. We're building community, and I can't stress this enough. There's a lot of people every day doing a lot of good work, boots on the ground, social workers, teachers, community organizers. The problem is they don't get the exposure and the resources they need to do their job. You know, we've done a lot of work with police accountability in the city of Chicago, because it's a big problem here. Police brutality, prison solidarity, political prisoner solidarity. immigrant rights. We support benefits. We did a compilation for with several events for the ACLU last year. We're definitely putting in the work, you know.
Yeah, that's cool. Paul, anything to add on that?
Yeah, it's a lot of collaboration. We'll set up a show in X city to benefit a cause that has maybe somebody connected to us is working towards. Manny in his off time volunteers at Books to Prisoners. It's a lot of collaborating, because the reality is, like, some interviews and some people will like call the band like an activist band, and like we shy away from it because of what he said. Like, there's actual people that get up every day to do activism, right? So we don't want to take that title from them. We will collaborate and we will use our platform to amplify those voices and give them a stage within our stage. And in that way, we just become a vessel, and we continue to collaborate.
Gotcha. Well, with regards to that, with regards to being, you know, a political leading band, it's social political, does that also present its own hardship where sometimes, man, you don't want to have that burden on you. You just want to go out and have fun. You know, does any of that get kind of not tiresome, but is the burden of having to carry the message that you're trying to, you know, put out there even sometimes could probably be its own weight, I would imagine.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's why we're you know, we're musicians too. You know, that's why we're not here standing on a soapbox just preaching, you know, the same speech over and over. We're here trying to make our art and then use the art as a vessel, you know. And like I said earlier, we're trying to do the best music that we can make with the best quality.
Yeah.
And then we add the message on it.
Yeah.
Anything to add on that, Paul, or is that pretty good?
That's pretty good. The music for us